On the fourth Sunday after Easter, every year we have readings from all of the Gospels, but they're all about Jesus as the shepherd of the flock. I know people who don't like the image of Jesus as the shepherd of the flock. They don't like to be considered a flock, because in this country, especially where we have been farming sheep in the far west and in places like Australia where it's a gigantic business, the sheep are not led by a shepherd, they're driven by a shepherd. The shepherds go behind the flock with dogs, and usually now I guess driving all-terrain vehicles, and they push the sheep ahead of them. That's the way they did it at our former monastery. They got behind them with dogs and pushed them where they wanted them to go. But in the time of Christ, and even today in the Middle East, shepherds don't drive their sheep, they lead them. The sheep follow very docilely behind the shepherd. I've seen it myself. I remember once in Israel, we were going down a road and there was a gigantic flock of sheep on the one side of the road, and the shepherd was standing at the edge of the road, and they stayed behind until we went by with our cars. The shepherd leads the flock, and that's the image Jesus gives us of himself. He is leading us to the Father. That's the big picture. And we need, as he says, to listen to his voice. How do we hear the voice of our shepherd? Where do we go to hear what he has to say to us? Well, I think the most obvious thing is we enter into the Spirit of Jesus, who is already within us. I will give you my Spirit, he says, and my Spirit will lead you into all truth. Will not give you all truth, but will lead you gradually as a community of my people into all truth, which is exactly what has been happening over the last 2,000 years. As new things come over the horizon, as new discoveries are made, as new human situations present themselves, the Spirit of Jesus has enlightened the Christian people to understand and to adapt themselves or to change the situation according to the will of God. Look at the instances of capital punishment in this country. Everybody accepted capital punishment for centuries. And now it's being more and more condemned by Christian people as against the will of God. In fact, it's even in the present catechism as to be something to be totally done away with. That's just an example of the people of God listening to the voice of the shepherd who speaks in the community. He speaks to us individually, and he speaks especially to us as a community of people, a flock, if you will, of sheep. So how do we hear the voice? Personally, we hear it in prayer, if we're listening. If we don't go to prayer with an agenda and never shut up until we're done the period of prayer. If we listen, which means the best way to pray is to take some of the gospel and ponder it for a few minutes and let God get a few words in before you start. But he also promised to be with us in the community of believers, the worldwide community. There is what the church calls the sense of the faithful. It's the sense, what the whole community comes to is what we really need to follow and believe. The whole thing of capital punishment. That didn't start with an individual. That became gradually, over the centuries, the mind of the people of God, the church. We are the church, we are the people of God. We are the flock of Jesus. And that comes to us gradually and comes to fruition and has come to blossom, you might say, in our own time. The fact that our new Holy Father has come to us this week is an indication of the voice of Christ speaking to us, because the Holy Father doesn't think things up on his own. He enunciates for the world what the mind of Christ's people has come to and come to understand and believe. And so we rejoice in this weekend of celebrating a new Bishop of Rome, a new shepherd of the flock, if you will. But we also have to remember that the voice of the Spirit of Jesus speaks within us individually, if we're listening, and speaks us communally in the voice of all the people of God, if we're listening. But just like the sheep that I mentioned who follow the shepherd's voice, they have to hear the voice in order to follow. And so do we. We have to hear the voice of the shepherd in order to go where he leads us.